Carlos Ramirez, owner of NVS Audio, Rosedale, New Jersey. Had a client come out. He took a 5-hour trip with his wife. Hung out in a hotel for a few days while he initially came down for a tune, but he had me go over the bike and he said, do whatever you think it needs to make it the best it could be. So he had all top of the line equipment. He's running all Euphoria speakers. He's running Euphoria xpert amplifiers. He's running dual batteries. He had one small lithium battery in the tour pack and full-size lithium battery under the seat. He had all the correct components to make a great setup, but they did a poor job of wiring it. So what I don't understand about this setup was he's got the 8-inch pods for the fairing. He's got 8-inch lowers, 8-inch lids, 10-inch mid-bass drivers in sealed imported bags. So the client's running an 800 watt in the fairing. In the tour pack, he had the Euphoria xpert 2000.1, and he also had the EX8.4. The EX8.4 is the most powerful 4-channel amplifier that Euphoria made in the EX line. It's capable of 1600 by 2. So we're talking over 3000 watts RMS, and they ran 8-gauge wire to the 800.4, which is fine. They also ran 8-gauge wire to the 8.4, and they also ran 8-gauge wire to the 2000.1. So 8-gauge wire for the 800 is fine. For the other two, the amplifiers take 4-gauge input. They took the wire, folded in half, slid in the hole, and the wire didn't even take up half the opening of the 4-gauge hole in the amplifier. So they knew enough to put a lithium battery in the back to supplement the power needs of the amplifier, but they went and shortcutted. If the company makes a 4-gauge hole, it's for a reason. They want 4-gauge wire. So the math doesn't make any sense that you would run the same size wire to the 800.4 you have in the fairing, but then in the tour pack, you run an 8-gauge to a 3000 watt amp and an 8-gauge to a 2000 watt amp. Then on top of that, we have total 5000 watts RMS in the tour pack. So let's cut it in half, and let's say we're running 2500 watts RMS in the tour pack. They only had one 4-gauge feed coming off the battery going to the amps and coming from the battery under the seat. So the limitation of 4-gauge wire is 1500 watts. So how are you gonna get 2500, 3500, 4500 watts to the amplifier if you're only using 8-gauge? Just asking. So I didn't even bother trying to tune it without rewiring it because it didn't make sense. And when you do this, you'll get away with it for a while, but stressing out the power supply of the amplifier, you will blow the amplifier eventually. It's gonna happen. So we rewired it, stripped the wiring out, started over. The 8-gauge in the fairing was fine. The only thing I didn't like in the fairing, they used a glass fuse holder. So we replaced that with our mini A&L, held down mechanical fasteners instead of pressure fit like the glass fuse holder. So we upgraded that to a mini A&L. In the back, the battery wasn't even mounted down. The amps were held in with Velcro. So we made a proper mount for the battery out of polycarbonate, bulletproof glass. So we cut it down on the table saw, routed it, drilled it, tapped it, and secured the battery down using 1/4-20 threaded rods. Then we did a 0-gauge feed from the battery to the distribution blocks. Then we ran 4-gauge wire to each amplifier. So now the amplifier is getting as much current as the battery can possibly supply. The amps are gonna play louder, run cooler. It's just the right way to do it. We cleaned up all the wiring in the tour pack. And then they used some really good RCAs, but I guess they were manhandling the RCAs during the install, ended up breaking the RCAs on the inside. So while I was trying to tune, I kept getting channels dropping out. At first, I thought it was a bad DSP, but we tested the DSP thoroughly, and once we bypassed the DSP, we still had signal dropout. So we realized it was the RCAs, so we had to pull out the RCAs. We ran some Stinger X1 series, and that took care of the problem. The previous shop knew there was an issue because they had the front and rear both wide jacked off the front output of the DSP, which defeats the purpose because now you can't tune the front and rear separately. And I know they tried to use the rear RCAs because there was tape residue, so they had them connected, had issues, disconnected them, just hooked everything up to the front to band-aid the solution and get the bike out. So we ran new RCAs, and he has an Arlen Ness neck cover, so it's really hard to run wires in the front. Maybe that's why they didn't want to run another set, but we took it apart, took our time, re-ran them. So now we have separate signal in the front, separate signal in the rear, separate signal to the mid-bass drivers, and the tweeters are on their own channel and their own amplifier. Bike sounds really, really good. That was basically it. The install was solid. The way they fabricated the bags was good. Fit and finish the speakers and the lids, the overlay pods was good. The only thing I can really complain about is the lack of proper gauge wiring in the tour pack. And the fact that the amps weren't bolted down and the battery wasn't bolted down. They were just held in with Velcro, so they were sliding around the tour pack. Other than that, I just got off the phone with the client tonight. He's going to schedule some more work. We're going to upgrade some speakers and change some stuff around. He wants to do the new Diamond radio because he wants his air ride switches on the touchscreen. So we're going to do that for him in the future. But check out the build. Client came from New York for us to do a tune. Asked me to go over the bike, and it went from a tune to a wiring rescue. Check out what we're up against. So, Euphoria amplifiers, super nice and neat. I love the way it's in the tour pack. So I'm thinking it's gonna be all good. And you pick it up, and it's not all good. So, amps are held in with Velcro. Cute little lithium battery, not bolted down. Circuit breaker not bolted down. And then if you notice, the speaker wire is almost as thick as the power wire. So Euphoria wants 4-gauge power and ground going to the amplifier. This is a 1600 watt amp. This is a 2000 watt amp. This is the amp running the mid-bass drivers. So 2000 watt amp requires 4-gauge. They also ran 8-gauge to this amp. So why would you take the time and money to put a lithium battery in and then choke off the power going to the amplifier? And then if this amp requires 4-gauge and this amp requires 4-gauge, wouldn't you start with 0-gauge? But nope, there's 4-gauge coming in, and then the 4-gauge gets split to 8-gauge and 8-gauge. So both these amplifiers are starving for power because you didn't use the proper size wiring. Amp's not bolted down. It's held in with Velcro. Well, trying to be held in with Velcro. At least they use oxygen-free copper wire. So we're gonna pull this out and upgrade all of it and make a mount for the battery. I hope he's got lithium under the seat, because just this back here wouldn't make sense. But we're gonna figure it out. Evil, evil, evil glass style fuse in the front. I'm gonna pull that out. So instead of using wire furls, they put tape over the terminals. Oh, they did use wire furl. I guess the tape was to try and make it waterproof. So on the 800 watt amp, they use 8-gauge. But on the 2000 watt amp, they use 8-gauge. Just trying to make it make sense. And then they use a fuse holder that only takes 4-gauge. And they jam the 8-gauge in there. Look at all that space in there. Look at that. Please make it make sense. Battery's actually bolted down, so we did a threaded rod, 1/4 into the bottom plate, top holder. Got some nice zero gauge, feeding distribution blocks, feeding the amps, the way it should have been done from the beginning. We moved the amp, rebuilt the panel. It was cracked in the center, so now it's got more support so it won't crack.
Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business. Mama, please don't worry about me. I'm about to let my heart speak. My friends keep telling me to leave this. So let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. Let's get down to business. Back and forth with the bullshit. I know it's sad.